What's up, you guys? I'm Dan, this is Frugal Not Cheap, and today we'll do a review of the Netflix documentary Get Smart with Money. So I just got done watching this documentary, and I'm not gonna, leave any kind of suspense for later in the video. I did enjoy watching it. But the premise is that we follow 4 individuals or couples, and they're paired up with a personal finance coach, and they're provided advice for an entire year. We've got one couple, which is John and Kim, and they're paired up with Mr. Money Mustache, or Pete Adeny, or Badany. Obviously someone that I'm very familiar with. I've read all of his blog posts way back in the day, and he really got me on the journey to FIRE. Then we also have a gal named Lindsay, who gets teamed up with Paula Pant from the Afford Anything podcast. I've been listening to a lot of her podcasts over time, and if you check out my How I Discovered FIRE video, you can learn a little bit more about Mr. Money Mustache and Paula. Then we've got Ariana, who is a mother of 2 children, and she gets teamed up with Tiffany Elise, who I'd never heard about, but she goes by the moniker The Budgetnista, and she wrote a book about how to get good with money. And then we have Teez Tabor, who's an NFL player. Really an interesting story, actually. He gets teamed up with a guy called Ross Mack. I'd never heard of him either, but provides a lot of interesting investment advice and had worked with Morgan Stanley for 3 years. So basically I'd say that we have kind of a diversity in where these people are in life and their careers and approach and talents. We also have a diversity in terms of the finance coaches as well. Really, they have different angles. Mr. Money Mustache obviously focuses more on frugality, minimalism, stoicism, do-it-yourself, environmentalism. Paula focuses more on improving your income, though of course she does talk about saving as well. And then it was interesting to see Tiffany's methods that really focus on sort of the real basics of personal finance, and she's got some good tips there as well. And then Ross Mack is really all about the investments and kind of demystifying these things for his target audience, and I thought he did a great job of doing that as well. So I think that we really have sort of diversity for the sake of really being relatable to a wide audience, and also to make for a more interesting documentary. So I don't think it was token. I think in this instance it was really helpful. So what I think I'll do here is I took a lot of notes while I was watching the documentary, and so whereas the documentary gives you everything in chronological order, it's going to give you updates on each of the clients over time throughout the year. I'm just going to do a quick little bit of some of the sort of highlights or interesting things that I found from each of the 4 sort of pairings, I guess. And I'll try not to give away too much, because you might want to check out the documentary, but just a couple quick highlights here. So first we've got Lindsay. She's 27 years old, and she actually lives in Austin, Texas, just 4 hours south of me. Actually, the drive should be more like 2.5 hours or something like that, because Houston's 4 hours. Anyway, here in Texas, she's a real creative type. She's got a real talent for art, I think. But she's working as a server and also a bartender. She's racked up a bunch of debt, and she's got some mental health issues that she'd like to get help with, but unfortunately she doesn't have health insurance. And she feels like she's working hard, but she's not really getting anywhere. So she's teamed up with Paula Pant, and I think it was a really good pairing, because kind of Paula's thing is really about entrepreneurship and about turning the things that you love and are passionate about and being able to really make a living doing those things. But the good advice she gives her is to focus on the 3 major spending categories. This is something I've talked about as well, is that of course housing is the big one, then you've got transportation, and then after that you've got food. So you can control those costs. It's going to do a whole lot towards making you live within your budget or within your means. So again, I don't want to give too much away about it, but basically we get to see her journey of shifting from being a server and a waitress to focusing more about her passions. And as that starts to build, then Paula gives her the good advice of separating out your finances for your business and for your personal by getting a bank account for your business, and pointing out how much more professional it is if you can bill someone from a business account rather than personal. There are a lot of great things that happen along the way in her journey, and she's also able to increase her savings account quite substantially, up to over $4,500, which, depending on where you are in your finance journey, may or may not seem like a lot. But when you're going from really struggling, maybe racking up debt, just really not getting anywhere, to having $4,000 or $5,000 in an account, It's a big, big difference. Next, we've got Teez Tabor, or Teez. He was a defensive back for the Lions, and I think he got paid $1.6 million for his first contract. But he pretty much blew a lot of it quickly. Of course, much went to taxes, but then he really blew a lot, and he was left with about $280K at the start of the show. Then, to make matters worse, he's actually been let go from the Lions, and so he's got to live off these savings while he tries to get more work. Ross Mack, again, I think was really a good matchup for him, with just the impression that I got anyway, because I didn't know much about him from watching Ross Mack, is that he comes at it using the language of his clientele. In other words, he doesn't use a lot of jargon. He speaks, he uses a lot of colloquialisms in his language. So I think he's really, really approachable for the target audience that he's trying to reach. And he helps Teez get into starting to invest with a brokerage account, talking about, the S&P 500 and what are stocks, what are index funds, and what's the benefit of having diversification amongst different sectors when you do invest in something like the S&P. So, as with Lindsay's story, there are some ups and downs with Teez's story, but by the end of it, he saved up about $40,000 in a brokerage account, and his future is looking much brighter. And probably even bigger than that for me is that he learned a lot from Ross, and he was keen on trying to help people in his community by imparting that knowledge to others, to young guys actually. So I thought that was really, really cool. Then we've got Ariana, who's again the mother that has 2 children. And she does have a husband, so there's more income. He's working as a mechanic, I think. She was the first in her family to go to college, but not knowing better, she took out $108,000 in student loans. And then after, she began her adult life, I think probably, just a guess, if you have that much debt, then taking on additional debt just seems like, like if the boat's already sinking, or I don't know, things are already this bad. What's a little more, right? So I'm not sure, but she got herself up to as high as $65,000 in credit card debt, which should be horrifying just to think about. The interest rates on that kind of thing, and how hard it would be able to keep afloat paying that off. Wow. So one of the cool things, little questions to ask yourself before spending that Tiffany kind of taught her is, is it something I need? Is it something I love? Is it something I like? Or is it something I just want, right? So kind of her breakdown is, of course, needs, necessity is very simple. Loves, though, I thought this was a cool idea. She says, a lot of people skip spending on stuff that they love because it tends to be relatively expensive, and they go right to frittering away money on things that are their likes and their wants. And so they're really kind of missing out a lot by doing that. And so she says, focus on your needs and your loves. And then, minimize the spending on your likes and your wants. And for her, likes are things that will give you joy or satisfaction for maybe 6 months or less, whereas wants are just like that quick hit of instant satisfaction. Just click on, check out at Amazon or what have you. The other piece of great advice that goes along with something that I always talk about that Tiffany gave Ariana is to automate things. And in this case, it was to automate a split of her paycheck amongst different accounts, one for the household bills, one for Ariana's specific bills, one into her spending account, so this is the only one she would take the card out with on her daily basis, and then also into her emergency savings. So right off the bat, Tiffany got Ariana saving for emergencies and then also planning appropriately for her household bills, her personal bills, and then even her spending, all without having to do a budget because, well, we're just taking the income and slicing it up and putting it where we want it to go. And that's a lot like what I do in a sense, is that, every time I get a paycheck, all the investments are automatic. And then my checking account is my spending account, but I maintain, a buffer so I don't have to worry about things, and I don't have to split up sort of my spending and my household or all my bills and whatnot. It's all just in one pile. So it's a similar thing, but a little bit simplified because I'll have the luxury of keeping that buffer of $3,000 in there, so I don't have to worry if there's some fluctuation month to month in my spending and bills. As long as I, keep to my plan, everything averages out. I won't give away too much, but it is a cool moment to see when her having this emergency fund that she started right off the bat with working with Tiffany is able to help her out and really alleviate a lot of stress. And in this particular case, I think the struggle with money was really Well, in all cases, it is a bit psychological and emotional, but maybe in Ariana's case, it was the most, or at least it stood out the most to me. So it was interesting to watch her journey with that. In this one, Tiffany coins the phrase post-traumatic broke syndrome. So it's kind of like, I went from having a ton of debt to eliminating that debt, and it's like, what do I do now kind of thing. So I thought that was a really interesting term and something to look out for during her story, Ariana's story. In the end, though, Ariana really did take on Tiffany's advice, and yeah, it's pretty cool to watch what she does. Then finally, we've got Kim and John. So these are really sort of the high-income couple, and an interesting thing. Again, they're trying to be diverse and to appeal to really anyone's situation. In this case, John was an engineer, but was let go during COVID and became a stay-at-home dad, as Kim's business as sort of a women's empowerment coach and also a psychotherapist really took off. So I'm not sure where the scalability is in there, but her income went from, I think, but her income went from $70K to the low hundreds K to approaching $300,000 in the year that they filmed the documentary. But on the other hand, and this is why it's perfect to have Mr. Money Mustache paired up with them, is on the other side, they were spending a tremendous amount of money every month. They were blowing $1,200 in groceries, but even worse, $2,000 in just miscellaneous shopping every single month. Just crazy. Oh, and then their mortgage was $36,000 a year. And these guys were also open to, kind of keen on the idea of early retirement, spending more time with family. Turned out that Kim had actually been following Mr. Money Mustache for a while, but just never thought that that was a possibility for her. So somehow there's this disconnect between the knowledge she was getting and then applying it to her own situation and saying, this is something that I can do. By the end of it, I think that her perspective and John's perspective had shifted to some degree. And of course, John would have struggled with the shift from being a breadwinner, maybe the primary breadwinner at some point in the relationship, to being the stay-at-home dad and not really being able to contribute a lot towards their financial future. Well, maybe being part of sort of this team of planning their finances together and working on this whole thing together and having a common goal for the future did seem to me to have had a really positive impact on their relationship. Though it's hard to tell from just the snippets that we saw, but it did look good. So I think that gives you an idea of the different stories that you'd follow if you watch the documentary. What I would say is kind of in summary is that the advice that's given is relatively basic, but it's the basic stuff is the really powerful stuff. Where if you're starting from ground zero or you've only started to dip your toes in the waters of personal finance, that this is really the big stuff to get a handle on. And then also that because we have 4 different, sort of experts, say, coming at things from a different angle, then you might see something that, is presented in a different way you haven't seen before, or just for some reason strikes a chord a little bit better, or you might have not even heard of. And so that could be really helpful. And then at the end of it, I would say that just it is a bit motivational in terms of having a brighter outlook about finances, being empowered, having that internal locus of control, and also a bit heartwarming. So there were some scenes where I did, because they're good with the music obviously, and the shots, the filmmaking and everything was really good. That I did get a little bit emotional, and really that's why I have this channel. Is that these personal finance topics, this whole attitude of the way to look at life and see opportunity and abundance and an internal locus of control, that you have some power in your life and you're not a victim to the whims of everything in your life, that you're an agent and you can act and help to craft your future. This stuff is hugely impactful, and over the years I've been blessed with the opportunity to help some friends and people that they've then recommended by word of mouth. And so there are a lot of people I've worked with one-on-one on their finances, and to watch them grow in that, I can't tell you how rewarding that is. It's a really, really cool thing. And then my hope in putting this channel together was obviously to entertain, but more so to do that on a more scalable basis. And so hopefully, these videos are helping people in their lives, and hopefully as the channel grows more and more, then it'll be able to help more and more people as well. The story, I think, out of the four that was the most impactful for me emotionally was Ariana's story. And I think really the most touching thing about it was, again, that, she went from really feeling hopeless and a victim of her circumstances, and not being able to use her talents and creativity and the things that she really loves in life, to where she's living a life that's really more in line with her values and her talents, and where she has a lot more, again, that mindset of opportunity and hope for the future. So yeah, that was definitely my favorite story. And so I would absolutely recommend, if you've got an hour and a half to spend to watch a documentary, and you're interested in these topics, it would be good to watch. It would absolutely be good to watch. So if you do watch it, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's review, then please hit the like button and consider subscribing. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.